Hello everybody, my name's Chris from Nordea Insights, and today I'd like to welcome you to our special webinar, Moving Towards Real-Time in the Nordics. Now we have a couple of great guests joining us today, Marta Stensheim Haugen, who's Head of Payments Product Management at Nordea, and Katy Spicer-Eriksen, who's Head of Liquidity Management and Corporate Channels Product Management. Now, breakthroughs in technology combined with regional initiatives and increased standardization are moving the Nordic region even closer to real-time payments and reporting as the norm. Katy and Marta will discuss the latest state of the real-time payments landscape in the Nordics, how initiatives related to standardization will play a key role in supporting instant schemes going forward, and Nordea's use of technology to equip financial decision makers with transparent information in real time, enabling them to take fast strategic action. So we're looking forward to a great session, and a couple of things to remind you. This webinar will be recorded and will end up on our Nordea Open Insights platform if you want to share it with any colleagues out there. And if you have any questions that you think of during the presentations from Marta and Katy, please write them in the chat and we'll get to those at the end of the session. So without further ado, over to Marta and the first insights.
Thanks, Chris, and good morning to all of you on the line. I would like to start out by elaborating a bit about different industry initiatives that is cooking and that we see will enable improved real-time payments offerings over the next few years to come. In the Nordics, the banks actually have a very good tradition for collaborating regarding common infrastructure and standards per country. Being relatively small countries and economies, it has been a need to collaborate about infrastructure elements, and we have kept the competitive arena to the services on top of the infrastructure. Compared to other bigger markets and economies, the competition has perhaps trumped collaboration even regarding standards and formats. This is probably also why the Nordics has been recognized to be in the forefront of innovation and digitalization when it comes to payments and banking. However, they are still mainly in local proprietary standards and no existing interoperability outside the local markets. So to respond to market needs and regulatory changes, there was a need to further develop more future-proof solutions to built on international standards in the Nordics. And on the next slide, we will take a look at the current state of the real-time payments landscape. A recent report reveals that in 2020, actually 56 countries are live with real-time payments worldwide, compared to 14 live schemes in 2014. So needless to say that the developments in this area is blooming. The real-time payment landscape in the Nordics has been picking up pace over the recent years, with several innovative solutions already live and others are scheduled to arrive soon. The focus in the Nordics until now has been to develop the mobile schemes in the respective countries, mainly focusing on person-to-person or P2P payments. These schemes are running on account-to-account payment platforms in the respective markets. Outside the mobile area, we see an increased uptake of SEPA instant payments in Finland, and we see an increased engagement from central banks in Sweden, Norway, and Denmark in order to enable further growth in real-time payments, as well as secured settlement mechanisms in the real-time payments area. It is also worth mentioning that the European Commission has just launched their retail payment strategy, where there is a clear ask from the Commission to the banks to do even more within instant payments, also across borders and across currencies. As one of my colleagues stated, it has instant payments written all over it. So if there were any shred of doubt, not that I have heard any signals of such, but instant payments has a large place in the future payments ecosystem, and it will be very interesting to be part of this journey over the next few years. One key development is Project 27 or P27, which aims to eventually introduce a real-time cross-border payments area for the Nordic region. If you haven't heard about P27 by now, Project 27 began as a multi-bank initiative to establish a to establish a Nordic cross-border payment infrastructure that will bring real benefits to the 27 million inhabitants of the Nordic region, hence the name P27. The aim is to replace the current fragmented clearing landscape with a new platform. P27 promises to deliver real-time, multi-currency, multi-country instant payment rails for the Nordic currencies. The new payment infrastructure will be a world's first cross-country and currency system, and it will create the foundation for a number of innovations in the region over the coming years. As an example, the mobile payment schemes will be able to make use of P27 as rails, being able not only to do domestic instant payments, but also cross-border instant payments. With the interoperability that P27 creates, one can imagine the possibility of sending a Swish payment from Sweden to a mobile pay receiver in Denmark, or to pay with your Swish app in stores in Finland. At Nordea, we see P27 payment infrastructure to be a payment game changer in the Nordics, bringing a number of opportunities for developing new market-leading solutions for our customers. The work with P27 is well on its way. P27 Nordic Payment Platform AB is established as a company to be responsible for the operational activities in P27. And implementation of the first payment type, which is SEC batch, is progressing well with go live and onboarding plan during 21 and 22. And we expect the payment or the P27 instant schemes to follow fast and to be rolled out as soon as possible within the coming few years. There are already numerous use cases also for corporates related to real-time payments and information. A few examples to be mentioned. In the insurance industry, it has been seen as an opportunity to build into their claims management processes and make it possible to instantly pay out disbursements into their clients' accounts. And B2B real-time treasury payments enabling faster response to changes in balances throughout the day for corporate treasuries. And even COVID-19 has revealed additional use cases related to, for example, relief disbursements from governments, confirmed payments for goods, and the list could go on and on. As the development of the instant schemes continues, we also follow the development of Swift GPI Instant with interest. As they plan to connect to all the different instant schemes, the more instant schemes that is connected, we expect to see the cross-border real-time payments area broaden even further. And on the next slide, I will talk about another key foundation for securing the development of the instant schemes, namely the ISO 20022 standardization and not least the harmonized rulebooks. ISO 20022 messages are data-rich, providing more details, which is useful for creating more value from the additional information. And when we are able to have the same standards, as in we are speaking the same language for all payments, both cross-border and domestic, we can make sure that all of the information related to the payments is consistent and that corporates and consumers can use the data as well as banks. Now we see a trend of standardization playing out globally, with the harmonization towards ISO 20022 within Target 2 planned for end of 2022. And even Swift messages will over the next years be migrating to ISO 20022 messages. By securing standardization globally, the ecosystem becomes stronger and possibilities for interoperability between the schemes is there and enabling banks to build even smoother payment experiences for the customers on top of these infrastructures in the future. And needless to say, P27 are obviously built on ISO 20022 standard and rulebooks are based on Nordic Payment Council NPC rulebooks, which is equivalent to and very close to European Payment Council EPC rulebooks for SEPA payments. Building customer experience on top of the infrastructure is obviously key, and new technologies as APIs and collaboration with partners is enabling the next steps. Katy will elaborate a bit on this and a few things that Nordea is working on in a moment. But that was it from me, and handing back to you, Chris.
Thanks, Marta. It's really fascinating. Lots of different things to talk about there. So if you have any questions, please remember to put them in the chat. We'll cover those in a little bit. So as Marta says, it's time to hear again from Katy, who's head of liquidity management and corporate channels product management at Nordea. And Katy's going to mention a little bit about how Nordea is looking to use this technology and applying the tech. So over to you, Katy.
Thanks very much, Chris, and good morning, everybody. Hope you can hear me loud and clear. I will now spend a few minutes discussing how Nordea sees that these new technology can be used for decision making, and I'll try to do that as much as possible in the context of the real-time developments that Marta's just spoken about. Now, this fellow on this slide, Mark Twain, the American novelist, famously said that there's no such thing as a new idea. And I just kind of wanted to put this out there and set the scene. And I'll leave this with you for the day, and you can ponder the provocative statement and whether you agree with it or not. You're very welcome to contact me on LinkedIn and tell me what you think of that. But certainly from a product and solution offering perspective, it resonates with me. It's been a challenge, I think, for banks to turn technology into value-adding solutions for our customers, and we've certainly struggled to translate tech speak into the language of the corporate treasurer in the past. And even some of the more established and sort of understood digital developments that we all use ourselves in terms of sort of mobile wallets, mobile payments that Marta talked about, and things like Apple Pay, they take time to become part of everyday use and to be adopted into our common psyche. And customer behaviour takes time to change, and adoption of these developments also takes time. And those that I just mentioned, sort of mobile payments and such, they have quite a clear and obvious customer benefit, right? Once you use them, you can see, oh, that's so much easier than using a card or something. Oh, sorry, could you just go back to the other slide? Thank you. Now, having said all of that, and this is not a webinar about COVID-19, you'll be pleased to know, but one report that I read has stated that the pandemic has compressed about half a decade's worth of change into less than a year. So the appetite for change and adoption of new ways of working is rapidly increasing. And I can give you guys a little personal anecdote about this, because my family back home in the United Kingdom, they own a small brewery with some pubs, and it's always been cash. You could only ever buy beer with cash. And finally, the pandemic has meant that they have now rolled out card payments. So digital adoption is touching even the most skeptical of people out there. And so instead of tech being seen as an improvement sort of in and of itself, and instead of talking about tech in a kind of abstract way, we start to see tangible ways that it's an enabler for addressing and exceeding the needs of our customers, and as a way of fixing sort of long-standing pain points in new ways. So for example, instead of talking about APIs for the sake of them being APIs, we start to talk about how the API can solve a problem or a pain point for our customers. And so with that introduction, there are 3 themes for us to walk through together. And please now let's take the next slide. Thank you. So the first theme is about bringing the bank to customers. And just to kind of go back to the quote, this is definitely not a new idea, especially in the realm of corporate banking. We've had this concept of sort of host-to-host connectivity, allowing kind of corporate customers to do their cash management in their own ERP and TMS software systems for at least a few decades. So not a new idea, but traditionally this way of working where customer uses the systems that they want to has been the preserve of the larger corporates, right? Because it's very technically integrated, it takes a lot of time and effort, it needs a lot of skill and of course a lot of investment to do that. And so the natural assumption here is that for the larger corporates with multi-banks and multiple geographies, you know, these are the ones who benefit most from the standardization initiatives that Marta mentioned, such as ISO 2022, and in terms of formats and payment types. And of course, there is some truth in that. That's not to say that that's not the case, but the benefit of this also extends even to smaller customers and even to single country kind of domestic customers, right, who have the same need. They also want to use their own systems. And so now that sort of ERP and TMS offerings have cloud-based solutions, they are also moving away from local formats. They're on the same kind of standardization journey that the banks are and the markets are. we as a bank are now able to give the same benefit in terms of using your own system, even to this smaller segment of customer. And therefore, we're able to bring the bank to them and where they want to consume it. And for Nordea, this is the extension of our Nordic file channel, corporate access, which also supports kind of a fully digital self-service onboarding model. So really very much about using the systems you want to use and bringing the bank to you. In the same vein, the idea of banking as a service, or invisible banking, as I've put it here, at Nordea, we like to work with our customers in a collaborative way because we like to understand processes and business models. And the idea here is that we integrate the bank services or the bank products into those processes. So for all intents and purposes, they become invisible, they become integrated and streamlined. And it's really important for us to consider not sort of the treasury process as one thing and then the bank process as another, but to consider that whole end-to-end flow and see where the new technology can therefore enable more integrated, more seamless, and indeed more invisible services. And then finally, the on-demand concept, this permeates all areas of our lives right now, not least the way we consume media, hence the icon that I chose here. But APIs are a tech that enables this on-demand kind of service here in terms of banking. For example, Nordea have some premium APIs like instant reporting, so you can get access to your account balances and transactional information when you want it. So it's on demand rather than us pushing it to you, which has been the model in the past. So perhaps you could think about that and remove some processes around consolidating reports or get rid of some Excel sheets, heaven forbid. And so with that, let's move on to the next slide and theme 2. Thank you. So this one is about building, complementing and enhancing. And I guess the point here is this isn't necessarily about you've got to go out tomorrow and replace everything with APIs and turn everything real time. That's not what we are talking about. But rather, this is about how you can keep what you have, which probably took some time and some investment to get that to where it is. And you can add on additional services to that by using new technology, because the way the new technology is built is that it's a bit more modular, it's easier to integrate. You know, you have these stories in the press of kind of teenagers in their bedrooms making APIs and whatnot. And maybe that's a little bit extreme, but that's kind of the vibe that we're going for here. So the idea is that you can add on services and complement what you already have. So there's this ability to blend the solutions more easily for different parts of the treasury, different users within the treasury doing different functions, and the different use cases that you may have. So for example, you might want to keep your existing host-to-host connection for regular payments, which is fairly stable, it's the same every month. But perhaps Marta mentioned a use case where you want to reimburse a customer kind of immediately. And for that, you could use something like Nordea's API corporate payout, where you can initiate a payment from your own system. And through that, what you get is obviously the whole real-time benefit, but you also are able to delight your own customer at the end of it by using the technology. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody in that case. And on the flip side, the same might be true of existing reporting and account statements. So for regular meetings, regular reporting, that kind of stuff, what you have today might be totally fine, but that might be complemented by the instant reporting API I mentioned previously, where perhaps you're running into something and you just need an instant balance and you want to call up what it is and have that real time at your fingertips. So it's important to consider sort of specific use cases and try to chunk that up rather than thinking everything has to be replaced tomorrow with APIs. And then finally, we can go on to the final theme, which is around data, leveraging data and AI and machine learning. And you may consider these buzzwords. And I think there's certainly some ethical considerations in this space and certainly some areas for caution, right? Because, the most notorious in this area is around biases in the models. The most widely publicized, of course, being Amazon's AI recruiting tool that showed a bias against hiring women. So there's definitely, definitely some education to be done here and things to consider. But I think what's really cool about this is that we're now starting to see some tangible use cases where this technology can be leveraged. That's really exciting. I think it's developed to a point now where we can see it in practice, which is really good. And there's a couple of sort of key areas or pain points that it kind of lends itself to really well, where we're seeing the use happen currently. The first one is around fraud and security. Now, machine learning in fraud detection is based on sort of algorithms that can process vast quantities of data in obviously a nanosecond, and that they can learn patterns over time. And one of the benefits of AI is that it's better at spotting patterns than a human being. So it's really perfect for the kind of fraud scenario. And it can happen and it can run in the background, kind of getting cleverer over time without kind of interrupting the customer experience in terms of their payments. Like, we all know how annoying it is when you go on holiday and try to use your credit card and it blocks it. Annoying and embarrassing, in fact. So that's really cool use case. And obviously, because it's getting cleverer over time as well, then it's increasingly effective and efficient. Then we have cash flow forecasting, which, long been a pain point, long been an area where banks have struggled to have good solutions. And so this is super cool use case for AI. And at Nordea, we've partnered with a Danish data scientist company to offer a product called Automated Treasury Intelligence. And this is a bespoke treasury forecasting software which uses historical data coupled with machine learning to predict the futures, in a crystal ball. And it's implemented directly into the customer system. So before, when I mentioned divisible banking, it's a good use case for that as well, because it sits there and it kind of gathers information, and it can get information from lots of different data sources. And again, like the fraud one, it becomes cleverer over time by using that data. So for treasuries that struggle with sort of complex structures, multiple data sources, variable data quality, and lack of visibility on payment information, and treasuries that have a lot of manual processes, I mean, yeah, don't we all? I'd really recommend reaching out and getting in touch about this one. We're super excited about that one. And finally, I wanted to leave on a kind of open note, or a kind of question to the audience around sort of data and AI. And I'm not a data scientist myself, but I think there seem to be so many possibilities opening up in this field, not just in finance, of course. And I think what's super cool is to think about, what is it that's causing you trouble or pain, or what would you like to know, or what could really be something that could really add value and be improved in your processes, and then to have that dialogue with us, hopefully, to see how we could meet that challenge together. So if you want to hear more about any of the solutions I've mentioned, please get in touch with your Nordea representative and have that conversation. Like I said, we like to work collaboratively, so yeah, very open to those dialogues. And on that note, I will now hand back to you, Chris.
Thanks so much, Katie. There's a million things to talk about there. Excuse me, but super interesting. But I suppose let's go straight to the questions. And actually, one for you, Katie. You focused mainly on cash management during this presentation. How do you see these topics extending into other areas of the Treasury?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. Yeah, so obviously focus on cash management because that's my area of expertise, but I think the principles of real-time and tech enablement, which we've discussed, reach across all areas of the financial world, and well, not just the financial world, but definitely in the finance sector. So like when I mentioned that, in the past we've struggled to turn tech into something tangible, good example of that is blockchain in the trade space. It's 11 years old, and it's still something that as an industry we're kind of maybe not doing so well at actualizing for various reasons. Now at Nordea, we have a platform called WeTrade, and it's a front runner in using blockchain to ease and enable our trade digitally and remove some of those paper processes and get rid of some of the risk. So that's a really good use case in the trade space. And from the API perspective and that sort of real time, we've also got some premium APIs in the FX space, which can be used to retrieve indicative pricing, for example, and can also be used to execute trades straight from your own environment. So there's lots of things happening, I think, across all areas of certainly Nordea, across all areas of the Treasury in this regard.
And when you see these new solutions or tools, do you, it sounds like there's a lot bubbling up now. How do you kind of make a decision on whether to explore them a bit further? Is it from putting yourself in the treasurer's position, or do you take a particular perspective when you're assessing, how to look at these new things?
Yeah, very much so. So with our product development, we always try to take the customer view first. So try to put the customer in the middle, and that's why we like to be collaborative with our customers, because we can try to put ourselves in that mindset and wear that hat. But of course, it's always good to sound these ideas off real customers and understand if it's something they would use, and sort of refine the idea in a real life use case setting. So yes, we have that culture ourselves in our product development, but also, like I said, like to work with customers directly, sort of around proof of concepts and pilots and such like.
That sounds interesting. Thanks, Katie. Somebody's dropped in for Marta here. Good question about P27. So read it out. Regarding the P27 project, do Nordea see any synergies in the Nordics regarding infrastructure for e-invoices? For example, a common Nordic solution for e-invoice, including consent, establishing infrastructure and distribution. E.g., the Norwegian e-invoice 2.0 consent register by Nets allows very good processes for Norway, while infrastructure in other Nordic countries are more complicated and require multi-bank communication and more customer involvement. So, any thoughts on that one, Marta?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, one additional, in addition to the core infrastructure that P27 now is working with, it is actually building a Nordic bill payment solution, which will potentially replace or substitute the existing bill pay solutions that is existing in the countries. And I think even though the different solutions that exist are they are very different nature, but I think they are all complex in their way, and they are sort of built on old technology, including the Norwegian one, even though it might be more full-fledged as mentioned here. So I think the aim for P27 is actually to build something simpler on top of the infrastructure. And then obviously the Nordic is the aim, but then as we know, Norway is not part of the P27 initiative currently, after they withdrew in the beginning of last year. But to my knowledge, there is in the banking community in Norway, they are showing increased interest for P27, in particular in this area related to the bill payment solution. So absolutely, I believe that we will have synergies and possibility to create something good on a Nordic level on top of P27.
That's really interesting. Has there been any indication from Norway, when they're thinking of joining, or is it all just showing a little bit more interest at the moment?
It's a really good question. As mentioned, they are showing interest, but I think it's hard to say whether and when they will join P27. But I believe that there is still hope and a chance for Norway to join, and in particular in order to benefit from these Nordic common solutions that we will enable on top of the infrastructure. So I really hope that Norway will come back in. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Marta. Something popped in here for Katie. What should treasurers do to prepare or get ready to benefit from all these changes? You mentioned that quite a few of them are interchangeable and you can build on top of existing projects and things you've already invested in. Is that the way forward, Katie?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think there's probably maybe two things to think about, which I sort of alluded to. The first is, like you say, Chris, where can you build and add on? So take a look at kind of some things that could be really value adding. Prioritize sort of a few key areas where you either don't have a solution right now or your current solution just really isn't meeting your expectations, and then have a dialogue about how you could fix that with your, with your bank and provider. Using some of these new things that we've talked about. So that I said that's the first one, is kind of specify or think about a couple of key areas to focus on. And then the second is to make sure that the people that you're working with, your software providers, your ERP system and such like, that they have the same outlook and they're on the same journey. I mean, generally speaking, like they are, we're all trying to get to standardization and we're all going in the same direction, but they obviously need to be equipped and ready to support the business models for customers in the same way that the banks do, and they need to be able to consume these new technologies so that the customers can use them in their own environments, like I talked about. So really important to make sure you've got not only a bank with the right kind of outlook and the support that you need, but also your ERP, TMS and other software providers the same.
Thanks, it sounds like some good tips. Bit of a tricky one here for Marta. How long do you think these industry initiatives will take to become fully implemented?
Yeah. So obviously, we are talking about both developing and changing core payment infrastructure. So it's fair to say that none of the mentioned initiatives is easily implemented, and they will require substantial changes in each bank. I think, and some of them have set deadlines and are considered sort of compliance initiatives, which is helping to reach the deadlines, but others are still in the planning. But I believe if we, within the next 2 to 5 years, then we will be seeing a total different ecosystem, I believe, with less friction and a large extent of real-time payments.
That's really interesting. But as consumers out there, will it appear as a drastic change, or will this kind of happen seamlessly in the background? And they'll be kind of only notice it slightly. How do you think it'll come to life?
Yeah, exactly. From a consumer perspective, I believe that they will not notice. They will only be able to. They will be offered more user-friendly, easier services from banks and other vendors as well. So from a consumer perspective, all this will happen in the back end, and to a large extent for corporates, depending on how complex they are. Basically, if they are running their stuff on the international standards, etc., that will also then partly happen in the back end. But then when solutions are built on top, then obviously it depends on their integration and readiness for that.
Yeah, thanks. We had a comment to our Norway discussion a couple of minutes ago. Excuse me. It says here, Bits in Norway is already fully engaged in NPC, where the rule books are made. NPC, Nordic Payments Council, perhaps?
Yeah.
Any comments to that, Marta?
Yeah, and that is very, very good. So obviously, although Norway is not part of the P27 for now, then it is important that also in Norway, where a lot of changes are happening, that we utilize the same rule books, because then we have at least there is a simpler onboarding to P27 from our perspective, and also you are closer to have this interoperability. So I think that is really good, and a prerequisite that also in Norway that the NPC rule books are adhered to, and it's really good that BITS is in NPC as well. Yeah.
Great, thanks. We had another one for you pop in here, Marta. Do you see the global schemes and the wallets as substitutes or competitors to the banks, i.e. the recent announcement of the partnership between Visa and Vips? Could they launch a bill payment service faster than banks and P27?
Yeah, it's hard to speculate on how the market evolves. It's interesting to see all the different partnerships and constellations and how they will be either substitutes, competitors, or if it will come together. It's not an easy answer to that, I think. So it's a good question and interesting to follow these different moves in the market.
Yep, thanks. Marta, these mobile schemes, you spoke about how they evolved, but they kind of evolved nationally. You know, thinking of Swish and mobile pay and those. Was there any point where they collaborated at the early stage that you know of?
I recall, but to be honest, I do not know what has come out of that collaboration. It's not exactly in my area, but I seem to recall that they had some kind of partnership. If that is more for discussion or if it is something else, I don't know. But maybe it's even someone on the call that knows more about it than me.
Thanks.
I think to my point also, I think that if the mobile schemes can utilize P27 as the rails for the payments underneath, then it will possibly create some this kind of interoperability. So
Great, thanks. Someone's actually written in the chat. Actually, no, they did not collaborate.
okay,
No.
then we got the answer to that.
Yeah, but maybe every chance to do so in the future with the P27, or at least the interoperability, as you. Okay, well, thanks very much. I think looks like that's it for the questions right now. And if that's the case, then any closing comments from Marta or Katy before we say goodbye?
Just thank you for listening, and yeah, hope that you'll be benefiting from some of the things we talked about soon.
Thanks, Katy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tamir, thanks for listening, and looking forward to continue this very exciting journey in the payment space, and maybe we'll come back later with an update.
Great, it's certainly a very exciting area right now, and thank you so much, Katy and Marta, for the great presentations and spending time. And of course, thank you to everyone who took the time to listen today. And as I mentioned earlier, this will be recorded. This recording will be uploaded on Nordea Open Insights. So we're happy to share that later to anyone you think is interesting. And thank you for joining us, and have a great day. Goodbye.